Well, you're about to meet an amazing Australian who became a friend of Her Majesty as a special member of her staff. Jim Frecklington left his family farm in Peak Hill, central West New South Wales, in 1972 after getting a job in the Royal Mews, which is Buckingham Palace's horse stables. He would go on to regularly ride horses with the Queen, and they became close as a result. He was then asked to travel with Her Majesty on that famous 1973 trip to Australia to open the Sydney Opera House. But his most famous and extraordinary legacy was as the royal family's coach builder, which led to the construction of those immaculate state coaches and the even more stunning Queen's Diamond Jubilee state coach. He joins me in the studio now. Jim Frecklington, thank you so much for coming in. It's an honour to have you here.
Chris, it's a great pleasure to be here.
This must be a very sad time, though, for you.
Chris, it is a very sad time. It is a very sad time, not only for myself, but I think in almost every country in the world, people are very sad at the loss of Her Majesty.
We knew it was coming, but it's still sad as if it was a shock.
We did know it was coming, but it came too quickly.
When was the last conversation you had with Her Majesty?
Just before the pandemic. Right. I was in London for a special reunion with Her Majesty, and it came as a great shock to myself.
How does a boy from Peak Hill, and I've worked near Peak Hill in radio many, many years ago, how does a boy from Peak Hill get a job in the palace?
Chris, many years ago I went to, this is back in the 1972, I went there as a visitor, and I became friendly with some of the staff who worked there. And one of the men told me that one of the Queen's coachmen was leaving. He knew I was very interested in the coaches and the horses. And he advised me, if you were looking to come and work here, you need to apply to the Crown Equerry, which I did. I flew all the way from Peak Hill to London. And after I received a favourable reply, and within about 6 weeks, as I say, I then travelled to London, and I've been involved with the royal household pretty well.
And it was interesting, the letter you got to say you've got the job actually said that it would be expected that you would keep on and stay on for as long as you wanted.
Yes, I do have a special letter from the royal household stating that. And
that was the case.
And it was the case. Not that I've worked there all that time, but I've been involved for many, many years.
In 1973, you got a letter that said, from the palace, that said, we would like you to travel with the Queen back to Australia when she opens the Sydney Opera House. Why you?
I was the only Australian who worked in the Royal Mews. I was the first Australian to work there. And
you were a translator. She wouldn't understand what she was hearing anyway.
That's it. But anyway, Her Majesty knew that we all enjoy coming to see our family, and so she invited me to accompany her on her flight. We flew initially to Canada and then on to Fiji and Australia. And then after the opening of the Opera House, I returned to London with Her Majesty.
You must have had a different relationship with the Queen. You knew her as Elizabeth the woman from all of those horse riding events you had with her. You were side by side. She would have told you a lot. I'm not asking you to tell me anything she said, but you saw a different side to her then, I guess?
Chris, I think the Queen is... We've all seen Her Majesty at different events throughout the world, and she's really a wonderful person. A wonderful person, and you know what we've seen, that's really what she's like. And I think Her Majesty will go down in history as being probably the most loved and respected person living on the earth today.
Yeah.
I cannot think of one man that would come anywhere close to Her Majesty.
And these carriages you built were just something else, built using parts from historic aircraft and vessels. What a labour of love and what an immaculate product you produced.
Chris, now what we have on the screen now, that particular coach, that's the Diamond Jubilee state coach. And also we have the Australian state coach there. I was very privileged to make Australia's gift for Her Majesty to commemorate our bicentenary. And then years later, I was privileged to make another coach with the Diamond Jubilee. And in that coach, I incorporated all sorts of historic material. The crown is original timber from Lord Nelson's ship, the Victory. I've also got material from the Franklin expedition and Captain Cook and Scott and Shackleton.
Wow.
As well as, if it wasn't for the aircraft during the Second World War, the outcome of the war may have been totally different. Though I actually have parts of a Spitfire that flew in the Battle of Britain. I've also got parts of a Hurricane fighter, as well as I've got part of a Lancaster bomber from 617 Squadron. Unfortunately, that aircraft crashed, but that was one of the aircraft that...
So they were not only works of art, they were historic works of art.
Chris, what I've really tried to do is that the coaches that are kept at Buckingham Palace, basically the history they have is the special events when they've been used.
Yeah.
And like, for example, the gold coach, that's been used from many coronations, basically every coronation since 1761. We got the glass coach that most of us remember Princess Diana riding in on her wedding day.
Yes.
And I should say I was very privileged to bring those coaches to Australia in 1977. The glass coach and also a lovely big open coach called the 1902 State Landau.
Brilliant.
I displayed those throughout the country. We had an enormous number of people come to see them.
Yeah.
And it was really from that exhibition I realised how many people love these vehicles. I realised no one made them anymore.
Yeah.
And I just felt that someone in the world should know how to make these special vehicles.
Well, you created an incredible legacy and she no doubt loved you for that as well and your friendship. Jim Frecklington, thank you very much for coming in.
Chris, lovely to see you.
Good on you.
Thank you.